Okay. So we did this page 7. We did the Mishnah, which was Mishnah 6, and we spoke yesterday about Aseh L'Charav, appointing a teacher, someone who's a teacher and a mentor. And now we'll go to page 7. The second thing the Mishnah says is Knei L'Chachaber, acquire a friend. We said yesterday, first of all, the Rambam, Maimonides writes that in general, a person should have friends, but it's important that the friends are going to be positive influence, because the influence that comes from friends is very strong, and sometimes it could be stronger than even a teacher. In other words, if a person has a very good teacher that teaches you right from wrong and is able to guide you, but because I have a friend who's a different kind of influence, that could be very, very strong and very powerful. And that's why we need to be sure that both are okay. But again, just like with a teacher, it's about having a specific teacher, someone that's guiding me and my mentor. Same thing with a friend. You can have friends and you can have friends. So everyone should try to find at least one person that is a much more of a closer friend. Number 2 is don't be a friend with a Russia. We know the story with Avram and Sarah and Yitzchak and Yishmael in this week's Parsha. I don't know if you got to it yet, but the story is that Sarah was very concerned because she saw that Yishmael was having bad influence on Yitzchak. Now Yitzchak wasn't an ordinary child. He was the son of Avram. He was a very righteous person. He's the one that became the father of the Jewish people, all the future of the Jewish nation. And yet, Sarah was concerned that the influence of Ishmael could lower his and compromise his level of spirituality. So this is something that we have to be aware of. And we ask, and that's why in davening we also ask Hashem, please help me have a good friend, and Hashem protect me from friends that are negative influences. Number 3 looks a little bit harsh. Let me explain it. There's a story in Gemara. There's a story in Gemara with someone called Cheni Hamago. Cheni Hamago is a very famous Tana. He was in the era of Tanoim, which are the sages who wrote the Mishnah. And he's famous because he was a great tzaddik. And he was someone that when there was a need for rain, when there's no rain and there was a fear of famine, there wouldn't be any food, they would go to him. And when he prayed for rain, it always happened. But he had a very unique way of praying for rain. We'd go out in the streets, take a stick, make a circle in the sand around him, and he would say to Hashem, I'm not going to leave this circle until you bring rain for your children. I wouldn't suggest you try it. You might have to stand there a long time. But when he did it, Hashem answered his prayer right away. And that's why they called him Chayni Hamago, which means Chayni, the circle maker. That was his name. So the Gemara tells a story that he fell asleep and he slept for 70 years. This might be the source for the Havdol Rip Van Winkle story, someone slept for 70 years, but it's in Gemara. And when he woke up, he didn't know anybody. Not only that, he walked into the yeshiva where they were studying Torah, and someone said something in the name of Choni Hamagel, and said, "That's me." He said, "No way, he passed away years ago. Can't be you." Anyway, he couldn't relate to anybody that was there. And then he said these words. In other words, he saw he doesn't belong to this generation. And he said to Hashem, "Oy chavrusa, oy misusa." Either give me a friend or I don't belong to this generation. Again, it doesn't mean chas v'shalom that a person should have any thoughts of this nature. It just means to bring out the importance of making an effort to have a friend. And the truth is, having a friend is something you need to work on. You need to work on trust. You need to work on having a positive relationship. And having a friend is not just someone who's going to be there for me, but I'm also there for them. But that's important because it's very helpful when I have someone else that I could talk to and discuss things with. And the source for that is also number 4. Number 4 is a pasuk. And the pasuks, these are the words in the pasuk. Daigo belevish, if someone has worry in their heart, worry or anxiety, yisachena, which literally means you should talk it out. Now, actually, yeah.
It's not Lashon Hara to talk it out. Like, even if it's true, but you're talking about it, and it's.
I'll get there in a moment. It's a good question. It's a very important question, and we'll soon talk about that. But first, let's talk about the concept. The concept, like the word Yisachenu in Hebrew, could have 2 meanings. One is the word Sicha. In Hebrew, Sicha means talking, conversation. Like what you learn in class, the Sichas, these are talks that the Rebbe gave. It's called Sicha. But Sicha can also mean something else in Hebrew. If it's spelled not with a sin, but with a samach. And Yisachenu could mean distract yourself from it. So what's the right thing to do? Is the better thing to do to talk about it, get it off your chest, or the better thing to do is distract it? Being that they're both interpretations, the answer is they're both true. Sometimes the better thing to do is distraction, and sometimes the better thing to do is to talk and share it with someone else. So there are many advantages in sharing with someone else. Now, first of all, let's talk about a situation that's not related to Lashon Hara. Just something that's pressing, something that's hurting, something I'm worried about, doesn't involve anything bad about another person. So carrying the load myself makes it much more difficult. Just the mere fact that I could share it with another person already makes it easier for me to deal with it, because I'm sort of sharing it with another person. And they call it ventilation, just getting it out of my own system is helpful. The second thing is, just like we said about a teacher, that because this person's objective, therefore very often they can give me an idea, a solution, advice that I would never have thought of myself. The same with a friend. That because, yes, the person is very close to me, we're close friends, but they're still relatively objective compared to me, to my personal life. So therefore, when I talk to that person, I might come to realize certain things through them that I wouldn't have realized on my own. And by the way, I can add this to what we spoke about yesterday, and the same applies to a friend. When the Rebbe spoke about everyone should have a mentor, a teacher that would guide you, and you can talk to them, and that'll help a person, prevent a person from doing things that could be wrong or destructive. The Rebbe once said something very interesting, that sometimes you don't even have to talk to your teacher. What does that mean? You say to yourself, okay, I want to hear what their opinion is. And the next thing that comes to your mind is, I don't really have to call them. I know what they're going to tell me. In other words, as soon as I start looking at the situation through someone else's eyes, I already see things more clearly. And I realize that I'm just being all wound up. I'm getting all emotional. I'm too much drama, and just calm down and everything will be okay, because I'm already looking it through that person's eyes. So again, the main quality is the objectivity. That's with a friend, and that's with a teacher. Naturally, people say, I'm afraid to have a close friend because how could you trust? Look what sometimes happens. I would think of it this way. The green light isn't so good and the red light isn't so good if they try the yellow light. Green light means just become close friends with everybody and anybody, and that might not work because you can't always trust everybody and anybody. The red light, which means I don't trust anybody and I'm not going to have any friends, is also not good. Person needs friends. The yellow light is proceed with caution. That's what the yellow light is. So it means to proceed, to make an effort to have friends, but to do it with caution and to know and give it time to develop that it's someone that you could trust. Yeah.
What about like if you want to make friends, you have to first work on yourself. Let's say you know if you're ready to make close friends after what happened in the past, and you realize you have to first work on yourself. Your own relationship with yourself, not Hashem, and
So the truth is that there's a lot of details to this. This is a thing that a lot of people are always dealing with.
yeah.
It's not something that's and every situation is a little bit different. So it's hard to give a general rule about all situations. The general rule is it's good to have a friend. The general rule is it has to be someone that you can trust, someone that you can respect. And
you have to have a friend now, or it's like eventually like you have something.
yeah, to work on it, right? You know, it's something that we have to develop, a friendship. And even though this is not in the Mishnah, but I'm going to jump to it. It's the next Mishnah, but because it's connected, I'm going to jump to page 9 for a second. On top of this page, it says to have a good neighbor. I touched on this yesterday, that it's important to have good friends and to have good neighbors. Later, we're going to learn that there are two sages that have like a disagreement. One of them says the most important thing is a good friend and not a bad friend. And the other one says, no, what's more important is a good neighbor and not a bad neighbor. What's the difference? One of the ways it's explained is the difference in quality or quantity. I'll explain you what I mean. A neighbor is someone you're very close to, technically, but not necessarily close to emotionally. You have a neighbor living next door, you're not the best friends, you don't have any very close personal relationship, but you always see them, they always see you, it's always around you. A good friend could be somebody who you'll see maybe once in a few months, but you're very connected and you're very close to each other. So in terms of quality, a friend is closer. In terms of quantity, a neighbor is closer because you see each other all the time. Both have influence on a person, the friend and the neighbor. And the difference in opinion is which is more effective. Like which is more, do I need more caution? Or which one should I invest more energy to make sure that I have that, a friend or a neighbor? But everyone agrees that both are important. So again, if you look in the davening in the morning, you'll see that we ask a special bracha. And the first things in the morning when we wake up is we ask Hashem, protect me from not having a bad neighbor and protect me from not having a bad friend. And if you remember the story that we just had with Noach and the marble and the flood, what does it say? That he was a tzaddik in his generation because there were so many people that were corrupt that's why he gets so much credit that in such an environment he was able to be in a proper place, because that's a very big thing. So the point that having a bad friend, there's a few phrases related to this. A neighbor, I'm saying, look at number 9, number 2 on the page. It says, Oile Rasha v'oile Shcheinei, which means woe to the wicked and woe to his neighbor. There are a few stories brought down in Gemara. The Gemara explains stories in the Chumash, in fact, that the reason why certain people failed and why they sort of spiritually had a downfall was because of their neighbors. Like one of the stories are, you might be familiar with it, even though we didn't learn the Parsha yet, that there was an individual by the name of Korach who made a revolution against Moshe Rabbeinu because he wanted to have a position of leadership. And he took along other people, and the Gemara says, why did they get involved? They wouldn't have had a position of leadership anyway. And the Gemara answers they were neighbors. We know in the Torah it says exactly how the tribes were situated. There was a special order. And those people in that tribe of Bnei Reuven, they were neighbors to Korach. And because they were neighbors, he influenced them. And on that basis, the Gemara says, woe to the wicked and woe to the neighbors. What about the opposite? Could you think of a source that if you have good neighbors, it has a positive effect? Yep.
And Lot by Abraham?
Oh, yeah.
Lot and Avram is one example. And there's something in this parsha itself. What was Avram praying for?
What?
Avram was praying for, I don't know if you read the parsha, that part yet, that the city of Sodom shouldn't be destroyed. And what did he say? Maybe there are tzaddikim there. And in the merit of those tzaddikim, it won't be destroyed. And Hashem said, no, there aren't even 10 tzaddikim. So therefore, which means, had there been righteous people there, just the fact that they live in the same city, that would have brought a blessing to me and a protection to me. So we have the other phrase, which is the opposite, number 5, Teiv l'tzaddik, the Teiv l'shchena. So now the question is, so if that's the case, if a person lives in a neighborhood where people, let's say, don't learn Torah, don't observe mitzvahs, don't follow Torah standards, could we say that, okay, you can't expect me to be different because that's my neighbor, that's where I live. I can't be different than the people, all the people around me. Is that a valid sort of excuse or not? The answer is not. Even though we say that people around us have a big effect on us, but nevertheless, if I'm in such a situation, I still have the free choice to be strong and not let it affect me. But the truth is, we should choose to live in a place that the environment is conducive for being in a positive way, not to live in a place where the environment is conducive for a negative way. There's a very powerful statement by the Rambam, Maimonides, and he says if a person lives in a neighborhood where there are only bad influence, they should pick themselves up and move to another neighborhood. What if there's no neighborhood in the entire city that have good people? So he says, pick yourself up and move to another city. What if there's no city in this whole country that is good? So he says, move to another country. What if there's in any country, anywhere that people are good? So he says, move to live in the desert. Basically, the point is, we must make an effort to find ourselves and our children should be living in a place where the environment is a supportive environment for good, not the opposite. Yeah.
So why is Crown Heights the place where a lot of the Asian live? Because the environment around us isn't so amazing.
Well, because we live, wherever we live, if it's in planet Earth, it's going to have other people living around us somewhere. But we created a neighborhood, which is a neighborhood of people who learn Torah and do mitzvahs. So it's a neighborhood that supports. In fact, sometimes when we have our Shabbatons with the parents, sometimes these other questions come up. Why do religious people always live in ghettos? I say, ghettos? What kind of ghettos? Always live together in the same place. And the answer is, if I want to live a certain way of life, and I want my children to live that way of life, then the right thing to do is live in a place where other people have the same values. I remember once saying to a parent, what if you lived in a place where all the kids on the block are doing drugs? Would you move to a place where they're not doing drugs, or that would be like going to a ghetto? Of course, he started laughing. Yeah, who would want to, if I don't want my children to do this and everybody in the block is doing this, of course, I'll move to another place. It's just that Yiddishkeit doesn't have the same value to them. But if there's a certain way of life that I want to live and want my children to live, and the people around me are different, then I would pick myself up and move to another place. And that's the way it's supposed to be according to Torah. So it's not a matter of we want to separate ourselves from the rest of the world. People go to business, they're out there doing things, mixing and mingling with the world. But the place that I live, I wanted to be in a place that's a conducive environment to live my kind of life. I remember a story, hearing this from someone, he was in construction. He had people working for him. These were people who had muscles, but they weren't they were more of a lower class kind of people. And one time, one of the workers said to him, Rabbi, I want you to know that I'm a good man. Really? I never killed anybody. I was never in jail. And he looks at him, you're a good man. You never killed anybody. You're never in jail. And I think to myself, imagine if we'd have graduation here and I introduce somebody from the class and say, this young lady, I want to tell you, she never killed anybody. She was never in jail, not even once in her life. Would that be a compliment or that would be an insult? So how does this person consider this a compliment? I was never in jail and I never killed anybody. It's true, but that's how you pride yourself. The only answer to that is he must live in a neighborhood where a lot of people do that. A lot of people end up in jail. So it's an accomplishment that I don't do that. If you live in a different neighborhood, I'm talking about Yiddishkeit now. If you live amongst professional people that are all people that work hard and earn their money and have certain professions, and they're all people with prominent people, and you live there, you wouldn't pride yourself that you didn't kill anybody, you weren't in jail. You need to do more to feel accomplished. So we see that no matter what, if you live in a certain area, it has an influence on the way we think and the way we feel about things. So if it's true that a person is expected to hold up the right standards no matter where you live, so why is it so important to live here and there? So the answer to that is number 4. And number 4 is also one of the prayers we say every morning. And that is, Hashem, al tivi'eni l'dei nisayim. Please don't bring me to a test. Which means if I'm in a situation where my integrity, my honesty, my spirituality is being tested, I should stand up to the test. But I'm davening to Hashem that to begin with, don't put me in a situation which is challenging and which is a test. But if Hashem chooses to put me there, it must mean that I have the strength to stand up to the challenge, to stand up to the test. So lichatchil, which means initially, I shouldn't go to a place which is challenging. And that's why I have to choose a place which is conducive. If I'm already there, I have to be strong. And another thing which shows us how being around other people has a certain impact on us is number 3. What's number 3? The Shulchan Aruch, and even the Kitzur, which is the concise version of the Shulchan Aruch, starts off with a saying from the Mishnah that where it says we should compare ourselves to these 4 animals, to a lion, to a leopard, to an eagle, and to an ox. And what does it say? Did I say what? A lion, be strong as a lion, be bold as a leopard, not an ox, a deer, and be swift, quick as a deer, and swift as an eagle. Each one is representing a certain character trait. When it comes to the leopard, it says be bold and courageous like a leopard. And what does that mean? Don't be intimidated by people that laugh at you, mock you. And especially for a Jew, our customs are different, the way we dress is different, the way we do things are different. And there's a world out there. If I don't have that kind of strength in me, not to be intimidated, not to be weakened because other people don't like what I'm doing, it's almost impossible to continue to live as a Jew.
What does mocking mean?
To make fun.
Thank you.
This is probably a mushal, but I actually remember reading it as a child in maybe a 2nd grade reader or something. Maybe some of you remember this too. But there's a story about a father and a son were traveling somewhere. So there was the father, the son, and they had a donkey. And the father is riding on the donkey, and they come to a certain town. And when they come into the town, they see people looking at them, pointing at them, and shushking. They try to know what are they talking about them. What are they saying? And they figured out they're saying, what kind of father is that? He rides on the donkey and he lets his young son walk. The son should be on the donkey and the father should be doing walking. Isn't that right? Yeah. So the next time they switched. Now when they enter the town, the son is on the donkey, the father is walking, but he knows it again. What are they saying now? what kind of son is this? He lets his old father walk and he rides on a donkey. He's a young kid. He could walk. The father should be the one on the donkey. Right? What do you do now? So next time they're both riding on the donkey. Now he sees people pointing and they're laughing. Why they're laughing? He picks up the conversation. They're saying, these guys are fools. This donkey's going to be dead in a few hours. I mean, it can't carry two people. All right. So in the next place, they both don't walk on the donkey. They're both walking. And again, people are pointing and laughing. What are they laughing now? They're saying, and they're foolish. At least one of them could be riding on the donkey. And he finally came to the conclusion, if you're doing things to make other people happy, you're never going to be finished. These people laugh about this, these people will laugh about that. So what should I do? Right, what should I do? I should do what I know is emes, what I know is right. And if I know that it's right, I'm not going to be affected by what people think, what people say. So the Rebbe always says, these words, don't be intimidated by the words will laugh at you, is on the first page, the first halacha of the entire code of Jewish law, which means this is the gateway. In order to observe everything else that's in Torah, I have to have the strength not to be affected by people that laugh at me. I once saw an interview that they gave to this woman who was 104 years old. And they asked her, so what's the best thing about being 104? So the best thing is no peer pressure. She didn't have any pressure from friends because at that age she didn't have too many friends that could pressure. Now, one thing, number 6. I understand it's a kind of joke, but the joke just brings out the point how, unfortunately, many people live a life that's sort of driven by peer pressure more than what I really want to do. Number 6 is, I think it's a pasuk, it's a verse. Tov shochen tov mi'ach rachok. A good neighbor that is close is better than a brother that is far. You can interpret this literally or figuratively speaking. So on one hand, a brother is close because they're related, and a neighbor is just a stranger. But sometimes a good neighbor could be more and better than having a brother, but he's far, either far geographically speaking or far figuratively speaking. Okay, so this brings out the importance of having a good neighbor, a good friend. It's something that's emphasized a lot in Torah, a lot of different situations where people were influenced one way or the other by others outside of them, and naturally, we have the strength to overcome this test, but we have to set ourselves up in a way that we're not being tested, and that's by having the right environment around us. Now I want to go back to the third part of the Mishnah, and that is number 8, which is to judge people favorably. We'll go into the more details tomorrow, but the general idea is that someone does something, someone says something, and there's 2 possibilities how to interpret what they did or what they said. One is that there was not good intention, and one that it was positive. So the Torah tells us that what we should naturally do, well, not natural, but we should do, is initially we should judge the person in a positive way, because human nature is a little bit different. Human nature is when someone does something, we're very quick to judge and very quick to criticize and very quick to assume probably this and that happened and they did this and that. And the Torah tells us just the opposite. We should be quick to try to find a way to justify what the other person did. Maybe there were certain circumstances, there's a reason why it happened, something caused it, and look at it in a positive way before judging someone and putting someone else down. to understand this better, we'll go more into the details tomorrow on Yitz Hashem, to be continued. Chana.